That's Chicago. Okay, so a fascinating article came across my feed today about Conspiro Spirituality. People who are very spiritual and also believe in conspiracies. Um, the article was very neutral, and even the author said that they have certain leanings towards being one of these kind of people. What does it all mean? Well, on one side of the street, you have the people that say there are zero conspiracy theories and um, reputable media are telling you the truth. On the other side of the street, uh, people that are going to tell you mainstream media is owned by maybe 6 large corporations and they have an agenda based upon the fact their ownership is interested in controlling the public discourse. And the ownership, if they own 6 enormous media corporations, certainly have the money to buy off politicians with bribes and choose who they want to be the figureheads of the official democratic government. But there is a secret government of the rich and powerful called the deep state or the cabal that is really running the world. Where do you fit in? What about the spirituality part of it? Well, you go on one side of the street, you have the atheist. There is nothing spiritual at all. And on the other side of the street, you might have someone who is, I don't think there's like one term, because if you are spiritual, there are so many different possible ways that you can express it. Our friend Clancy wants to tell you that if you put those 2 streets in a crossroads format, you can then graph people according to these 2 scales. It's quite often done with research. It is interesting because it brings to mind the integral studies of a philosopher named Ken Wilber. He has an excellent book, probably multiples, but the one I read, it was a very good book for the layman. In other words, somebody who's not really a PhD in this. And the primer, like primer is like a spelling primer is what you give a child of about 6 or 7 to learn how to spell. A primer for integral studies and everything I've been talking about is Ken Wilber's book called Boomeritis. It's a story and it also gives the integral theory. And a similar kind of thing is known as spiral dynamics. And that is you keep re-experiencing the same kind of outer experiences, but as you grow, your inner world changes and therefore your interpretation of outer events change. And Wilber talks about stages that people go through. One example would be, somebody who was a very traditional churchgoer. They go to church and they experience church as, well, my family has always been a churchgoer. And it's very important for me to maybe learn passages from the Bible by heart. And you have to have a lot of faith, even though, on the outside world, I don't see anything that's, um, really directly relevant to the Bible. It's my family tradition. I'm still going to go, and I'm going to bring my children. And when something bad happens, I'm just going to keep going. I just have to have faith. I just have to have faith, and everything is blind faith, and that's how people go. And then Wilbur might say that people like this might go on like that from, when they were a child and taught this, and they might go into a different way of looking at life. Perhaps, I don't know, let's pick an age, maybe the age of 35. They come to the conclusion that the traditional religion is not working for them. So they stop going to church. And perhaps they have a very dry spell where they don't think of anything spiritual whatsoever. They are totally grounded in what the world presents to them. You would probably call this kind of person I don't believe in God anymore kind of person. And finding other interests. Maybe they get involved in business, or maybe they like to watch sports. Maybe they're interested in, I don't know, just nothing to do with church, nothing to do with anything to do with that category. It's been seen, it's been played with, and I'm tired of it. I don't want to do anything more with it. I'm done with it. I'm done. Some people just say, I'm done. And that's it. So then they go through their atheist spell. And perhaps when they are, let's give them 20 years. So when they're 65 years old, something happens. And maybe it's the feeling that, I've become a senior citizen and I'm facing my own death. And something comes along. I don't want to go back to a traditional church. I tried that when I was young. So maybe they want to it's hard to say what's going to trigger them to turn back to a search for a spirituality. Perhaps they see something that they can't put into their worldview, something that shatters their worldview. Something that they can't explain scientifically. It's something that they can't get a good answer. Science doesn't give them a good answer. And I don't know what that might be for these people. It's hard to come up with an example of what they might see. So I'm just going to leave it as something changes their mind. Something pushes their rational mind over the edge, and they can't explain something they've experienced. So then what happens is they go on a search. They go on a major search to try and get an explanation for something they've experienced. And maybe, in the old days, they'd probably go to the library, public library, and just start browsing around. In the olden days, I don't know much older, before the internet, Before the internet, they might go in the library or to a bookstore. We used to have a lot more bookstores in our cities and towns where you could just go and browse, and they might come across like the self-help section. And then they might start reading some books, and they might either give up their search and say, there's still nothing here for me. I just can't explain it, but I'm not going to waste my time. Or somebody might deeply get involved in researching some kind of explanation for what they have seen. With Wilbur, it's quite likely that this is going to be through multiple lifetimes that people would cycle through what he presents in Boomeritis. Because it's quite likely that some people are going to be, what I explained in the beginning, their family were churchgoers. They were brought up as churchgoers until the day they die. They're just going to run on blind faith. They don't see anything external that would corroborate what they're learning at church. It's just, I'm hanging on to my faith. It's what I've got. It got me through this way. And they go, and then perhaps they have another lifetime. Well, those people believe in reincarnation. I don't know. But, for the sake of telling the story, the next lifetime, perhaps they're born to a different kind of parents. Instead of being a church-going family, maybe they're born into any kind of different family, but they're not church people. So they're going to get a different upbringing, and however that expresses in their path, it's going to be different than the last lifetime. But if you look at Wilbur's map, he's going to suggest that the next lifetime is going to be some way to give this soul a different education, and that way interpreting life through a different lens. And this goes on and on. And it might even happen within generations of the same family. Perhaps the grandparents were very much churchgoers, and then their children might have started off churchgoers and then abandoned the church. And then the grandchildren's generation might not be anything to do with the church, but they might be different than their parents. The parents might be atheists, and the children might be, maybe they're really into Mother Nature. They love to spend time in nature, and they love time with animals. So in 3 different generations of the same family, you've got really 3 different world views, 3 different lenses that people are looking through at the world. That's all about I'm going to be able to explain in this short video about Ken Wilber and his integral studies. But I would encourage you to try the book Boomeritis. I don't know if it's at your library, but I'm sure you can buy it online. And you can also check the internet, because I'm sure that you will find information about Ken Wilber on the internet. What's that got to do with our original talk about people who call themselves spiritual and are also into conspiracy theories? Well, I guess I'm going to have more talks, because I'm at 14 and a half minutes, and that's about as much as I can give you in order to give it on Instagram TV, where I also post if you're a YouTube follower of mine. Thank you for watching, and if you are interested in more in this kind of topics, please subscribe and share me to people who you think might be interested in these musings.